The first time I delivered to Scheitelman's warehouse down in Utica, a guy says to me, "Well, where's your union card?" And I said, "Well, I'm an owner. I'm an owner deliverer, so I don't have to have a union card." And he says, "Really?" And I said, "Well, check it out."
It's very common for people to want to get into the bee business.
Be careful about starting too big. Just take her easy and just see how it works. Hello, everybody. I'm Rita Scott. I was Rita MacDonald, married to John for 19 years. John and I started in the honey business in 1964. We moved to Paris Hill Road, and we had maybe 10 hives, and just an interest in it. And he was teaching school. He taught for school for between 10 and 12 years, something like that, and then could work the honey business full time. And all that time that he was in teaching, he was also building up his honey bees, the numbers of bees, and we started packing honey. We had a lot of high school help. Kids that he knew at school, he'd invite them up and have them doing this and doing that. And so we always had a lot of youngsters around.
How many years was that a full-time occupation for you and Dad in the honey business?
Well, it was part-time, so from 64 to 74, it was probably a more of a part-time. But after that, it was a full-time. That was where our whole income came from.
Yeah. So when you were at that stage, when you're in the full-time honey business, what kind of price was the average pound of honey in a jar going for?
Okay, well, when we first got into it, I thought, why are we doing this? Because it was right after World War II, and during World War II, people couldn't get sugar, and so they were eating honey, and they were fed up with it. Didn't want any more of that. So the price of honey was about 11 cents a pound.
Nice.
11 cents a pound from the very beginning, 13 cents a pound, something like that. And it went on like that for years until about the time of the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, when we had what I called the hippie movement, where people were thinking about going back to natural things and things like that. And then the price of honey started to pick up a little bit, 17, 18 cents a pound, but it was a meager margin.
Yeah. So you at that time had supermarkets that carried your honey, and they advertised our label in their advertisements.
Yeah,
right?
Especially at Christmas time. We lived in the Utica area where there are a lot of Italian people, and many, many Italian families would buy a 5-pound jar of honey because they would be making certain cookies and certain sweets for Christmas or Thanksgiving, and they had to have that volume of honey to make that stuff. So it was, we would sell cases of honey to Chicago markets or shenanigans, because that's where the Italians shopped mostly, and it was buy 10 get one free kind of thing. That would be 10 cases and you got one case free.
I see.
So those were the promotions, so that kind of thing.
Nice.
And they would be in the ads, big pictures of our label and stuff like that in the food ad for that particular time especially. And then we sold it 1-pound jars, lots of it in 1-pound jars as well. But yeah.
I remember one account that you had, maybe you can kind of help us understand that. It was S.S. Pierce out in Boston, I believe.
Yeah.
That was buying a bunch of our honey, put it on the shelves in their stores, right?
Yeah, now S.S. Pierce at that time really was a well-known label, very fancy gold label, and it was a well-known label. But at that point in time, they would only be selling in specialty shops.
I see.
Or institutional. So they would be selling to nursing homes and places like that by bulk.
I see.
So a lot of our honey went that way. So we did our own label and some private label. We packed for Cumberland Farms. Okay. You may know that name. I don't know if that still exists.
We have Cumberland
I think
Farms.
It does, yeah.
Yep.
And we often, because that's kind of a convenience store, it was always half-pound jars, which we all hated. Half-pound jars are
A nightmare.
a lot of work for, but
Yep.
that's all pretty much what they wanted. Yeah. I had responsibility when we got into the packing of honey. I had the responsibility of getting the honey prepared and ready for packing at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon when the kids had come back from school, and we would pack honey from, say, 3:30 till 6:30, and we would get the 3,000 pounds in jars in that time, and then we would all have a dinner together, and that was how that went. So it was about a 3-hour stint of packing honey. So my job was to get it ready and pumped over and through the strainers and ready to go as soon as people were there to help with the packing.
I remember as a kid, we would come back from school, like you were saying, and then jump in the barn, and we had it semi-automated there, where two of us on that one track, two of us would be filling with a spout, and then putting that jar of honey on the conveyor belt, and then the next kid would be putting caps on, and then the last kid would be putting labels on and putting that jar in the box,
in the case,
and then gluing the box down. I have fond memories of you coming out to the barn with
the
glue that you would make in the kitchen in the house.
And it was simply wheat paste glue.
Yeah. So
I would make from flour and water. I would make a paste, and so the wheat paste flour glue. Yeah.
So that glued our label on, and it glued the top of the box down. Mm-hmm. And so
that was early. We had other glue for the label later, but
Yep.
Yeah, early on, yeah.
And I also remember, this takes you back to those early days where we had like a tag board with about a dozen labels, I guess, if I recall.
Put the glue on.
And we put glue on the tag board and then stick the labels down on there, and we put a piece of newspaper over the top of it and smooth it out and pat it down. And then we take the newspaper off, and you have that label that was equally kind of glued. Yeah. And then we put that on a jar. We would do that actually ahead of time before we put honey in the jar. So there was a lot of very labor intensive parts of bottling honey. A lot of times people think that, oh, well, a bottle of honey right now, it's $10 or $12 a lot of times, or even more than that. People complain about it as a consumer, but I look at it and I say, that's quite a value right there. Buy that sucker, give them a tip, and move on with life. Yeah. Because that's a very, very labor-intensive way to try to make a buck.
Especially when you're talking about the production part of it, having the bees and working the bees and all of that part of it. We're talking now about the packing part of it. But.
Yeah, the packaging is just one aspect of it. It's probably only a fifth of the procedure, I would call it. So there were 4 of us kids, and then sometimes we would have some other people splashed in there to try to help out, and we kind of had the system already set up, and we kind of have a good time. We're great friends. The sibling group that we have is an amazing. We're very bonded, and so we enjoyed working with one another. And then when we would have a new person thrown in the mix, we would pretty much torture that person, and we would actually give them a chance for a little bit. We wouldn't bother them at first, but we would find out whether or not we would consider them useful. That would happen
Were they going to make it or not?
Right out of the gate, yeah. Is this going to really actually help us over here? So we had grown people. Sometimes there would be an intern from maybe one of the universities
Cornell,
show up, and so these grown, very smart people would show up, and we'd find out that maybe they didn't carry the water here with this maneuver. So,
this wasn't their bag.
Yeah, they can't hang with us.
I wasn't ordinarily on the bottling thing. I was back in the house making dinner, and I made dinner for not only my family, which was 6 of us, but whoever else was out there working. So I always had maybe 8, 10 people at the table. So I was always doing that. Well, I used to drive the truck and deliver honey. That was another big thing that I did do. Sometimes I get up at 5 in the morning, take off and get to Syracuse, and I get back before the bus picked up the kids to go to school. The first time I delivered to Scheitelman's warehouse down in Utica, a guy says to me, "Well, where's your union card?" And I said, "Well, I'm an owner. I'm an owner deliverer, so I don't have to have a union card." And he says, "Really?" And I said, "Well, check it out."
Yeah.
So that was I did do a lot of that, getting up and Kevin, when he was real little, sometimes he'd ride with me, like he's only like 3 or 4 years old.
Huh.
So I did do
Delivering honey.
I forgot about that part.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot.
I forgot about it till now. I remember when I was 16, one of the very first moments I had my driver's license, you folks got me loaded up there with a truckload.
Suburban?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it was that truck. And
Okay.
then I drove from Sequoia, New York down to Cherry Hill, New Jersey with a road map.
Yeah.
And and then picked up a check and then drove back with that as one of the first trips off the farm. I remember one run there where we were extending some credit to a gentleman that shouldn't have had any credit extended to him. Mm-hmm. And he was a very demanding guy that was giving us a hard time about how we put the label on the jar and everything that he could come up with for a complaint.
Well, he was trying to get less money so that he would have to pay less money. He was trying to
chisel us, and he's doing this now with my sibling group. He's complaining to us while we're packing his honey, and it's coming out, according to him, inferior to what he demands.
Yeah.
And so that gentleman actually, I remember this, it was kind of a pivotal moment where I thought of choking him. And so I found out that he owed us for a load of honey, and then he's complaining about the one that we're loading on his truck, and then he turned out to be a kind of a criminal, in my opinion, where he ended up not paying us for any of it. And so there were places like that that were kind of unfortunate, where you start to learn a little bit about human behavior, and you get a little disappointed because you're trying to do the right thing, and then that isn't being returned to you.
Yeah.
So,
and sometimes, like, when we tried to sell in the New York market, there was, like, an unwritten thing where you had to pay somebody off in order to work in this market. You could not, except for very few places where we could go in New York, you couldn't do business in New York.
Huh.
It was
Interesting.
Yeah, it was like a closed deal. When we had brokers, they were from New England.
It's very common for people to want to get into the bee business. They may not be thinking about what's next after you get a box of bees. And
I'd be careful about starting too big. Just take her easy and just see how it works, whether it's right for you, whether you can enjoy it, and not to be worrying about how much honey you're getting. But just make sure that you share the honey that you do take off with the bees that are there, and not take off too much, and make sure that you're not greedy about that.
Yeah.
A lot of people get a little bit over anxious and take too much honey, and then the bees are not going to win her over.
We did meet a lot of great people over the years doing the packaging of honey and working in that whole industry.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing people that we met up with. I have very fond memories.
And a lot of the kids that we had from school were very, very good.
Yeah.
And they have good and interesting stories about the.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the folks that were in the Sequoia Valley through these years that we're talking about are very bonded with our family.
Yeah.
And they're still in the loop.
Yeah.
And we still relate to one another. So I want to shout out to those folks.
Oh, absolutely.
The Lemios, I got to mention that family name primarily because there's so many of them. And they were game. They hung tough with us.
And the Pollocks.
Yeah,
and,
the Reveres, and there's a whole bunch of different family names.
Yeah, lots of them.
Yep.
Yeah, great people.
Yep.
Very a hard-working group of people.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was a nice way for, I think, for us to know them, and then for them to kind of get a little glimpse into what we were doing up there, and then carrying on some of that tradition. Some of them would actually get their own bees, right?
Some of them, yeah.
And then get kind of going with it.
Right. Well, like Amy and Rich came to work with us, and they
Yep.
had a very successful beekeeping career.
Yep.
Both of them.
Yep.
Yeah, very, very good beekeepers. And they worked with us for a number of years,
Yep.
right out of college. Both of them college educated. And
Yep.
yeah.
Tell me about them particularly here.
Okay. Well, Rich was graduated from Oneonta and was, thought he maybe would go into teaching, but never did. And then Amy graduated from Middlebury. She was from Ithaca, and they met at our place, and that was a bond that they raised a couple beautiful kids and had a beautiful honey business of their own. They used to give you kids names, like they called Kevin the dirty dealer, because one of his jobs was to deal labels into a labeling machine at that time, and they called him the dirty dealer. And he was only about 5 or 6 years old. He had his little job to do, and he got paid, but he was on salary, and he got pretty ticked off about the fact that he wasn't getting an hourly rate. Even at 5 years old, he decided that he was getting shortchanged.
Oh yeah.
And that's
his approach now.
he's not going to get shortchanged.
Yeah. So when Rich, correct me if I'm wrong, Rich mentioned that he was actually hitchhiking down the thruway, and he noticed the honey farm and popped in. Maybe that's embellished, Rich. You'll have to fact check us
That
here.
might be. Really what I remember about them first was Woodstock was happening in our area.
Yeah.
And we called these folks that were gathered together the hippies, because they were free living kind of. They lived in a yurt or something up on the hill in West Winfield, and they were going to go to Woodstock and have a lemonade concession at this Woodstock. So they had water coming from a tanker from someplace. They had lemons coming from someplace, and our honey was all supposed to get there and get together, and they were going to be making homemade lemonade, and it was going to be a money-making deal. Well, if you know much about how the whole Woodstock thing, if you start trying to bring things together, nothing worked. There was no way that any of these parts ever got together. So it was, they could sell honey or give people honey, I don't know where the lemons, but they had the honey. It's about all they had.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's all people really care about
That's
anyway.
all. And they were too high to care.
Yeah, and it doesn't mix well with cold water anyway.
No,
Yeah,
right. It would never have mixed well, but that's the way.
That's pretty cool.
And that was one of the early.
Rich and Amy.
Yeah.
I would say something about you and Amy. There's not that many ladies that were in the bee business over the years, traditionally on a big scale. And so both of you have been very impressive with staying steady with it and knowing the business better than most people ever know it, because you were living in it.
Yeah.
And I give you credit for toughing it out and keeping our organization organized, because it was so amazing and so necessary. And so you had a huge part of that over there at MacDonald Honey. And then Amy took that on as you were her example in some ways, and she took that on and did a champion job as one of the only women that I know on a big scale that worked bees through those years.
Right. I never worked the bees. I had a bad time when I was pregnant for you. I got stung in my head, and my head got absolutely enormous. And so I really was very concerned about being stung very much. So I wasn't afraid to be around them, but I was cautious about things. So I never but Amy was a very proficient beekeeper, and she was very, very good.
Yeah.
And Rich kept beautiful records.
Yeah.
I mean, just
Yeah.
always filled books of diaries of what's going on when, and very
Every day they wrote in the journal.
every day. Yeah.
Every day, and
Yeah.
that was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So you were rolling through all these years. You're like borderline allergic, or you're not having a good time here with that. You got 4 kids to feed. You got a bunch of livestock all over New York State and then South Carolina. And what were your favorite parts of that? Was there anything?
Well, I think we had a pretty dynamic life. I think we learned a lot of things from this whole experience. We didn't just sit around and watch TV at night, I'll tell you that. We mostly had jobs to do most of the time and productive things, and I think we learned to have a pretty decent life, and it was important to me that you children were having a good life. I mean, that was my goal.
Yeah.
To me, it was more important to have time for fun than to be working all the time. So
Yeah.
I always made time for us to, if we went on a bee trip somewhere, say we went to a bee meeting or whatever, I would make sure we were going to a state park or do something else besides. We didn't just, yeah.
Yeah, you were a champion at getting us the 4 kids to
Yeah.
Letchworth State Park.
Or wherever we were.
Wherever we were shacked up.
It was in Vermont or wherever it was
Yep.
that we were. We were going to museums, or we were going to a park, or we
Yeah.
were doing something that was fun.
A lot of experiential
Yeah.
things. And then the other part of it that I have very fond memories of was at the end of the day working with the bees.
Mm-hmm.
Or extracting or whatever we're doing, we'd end up going to take a little swim in the pond over there at Chenoa's Pond.
yeah,
Yup,
yeah.
and have a little barbecue kind of thing.
Right,
It was a clean way to live.
right.
And we ate well. We had fresh corn from down the road or whatever
or
we
our
did.
own garden.
Yep.
Yeah, I ran the garden too. So
Yeah.
those kind of things.
But we were raised practically
Yeah, very.
by you, right? We were raised
We had
practically.
we had to do what we had
And
to
we
do.
got things done. I'm
Yeah.
proud of it. Yeah, you did well raising us. So you did really well, Mom.
Thank you, dear. Thank you.
This has been fun, and I'm grateful for your time to do this.
Thank you.
I like it.
Yeah.
For the record, I love
For the
you.
record.